It's my honor and privilege to introduce my friend, Emily Levy, who is the founder, one of the founders of Mighty Well. As I said before, her story is inspiring and just an amazing entrepreneurship journey. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily because I think you'd much rather hear from her than hear from me. So.
Thank you. I have a mic. Thank you
so
much.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all for coming after hours. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. I'm here to share my story of how I started a social for-profit business out of my dorm room and taking a personal pain point and turning it into an opportunity to help thousands of other people. I like to just talk freely, and if you have questions, if you guys prefer, you can just ask them as we go. I know sometimes we can kind of forget the questions if we leave them all to the end. So feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to ask me just about anything. Nothing's really off limits. So I'm an award-winning social impact entrepreneur. I'm an advocate for people with disabilities. I myself have a disability, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. I'm a public speaker, and in the pandemic, I adopted another poodle, so I'm also a dog mom. My goal is to empower you to live out your entrepreneurial dreams, and I'm going to tell you about how I went from being very chronically ill to becoming a CEO of a startup right out of college. And just as a little bit of background, I actually recently stepped down as CEO to take care of some health needs, and my current role is Chief Brand Officer of Mighty Well, co-founder and president of our board. So Mighty Well today looks very different on how we started in our college days at Babson. Today, we're dedicated to empowering patients to have best-in-class medical supplies with easy-to-understand content and education. Our mission is to improve the experience of being a patient by turning sickness into strength. We started as a class project while I was at Babson, where both Michael and Susan were professors at the time. I participated in a program called Center for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership, which is how I really started to work on this idea. So what went for a class project for about a year and a half. We then applied to MassChallenge, and I told my parents that I was turning down the high-paying job offer I had in New York City, and I was going to pursue this dream of mine. We officially launched in 2016, and to date, we've had over $1.7 million in sales. We've raised $1.5 million from a variety of funding rounds, which I'll get into a little bit more about. We've launched 7 products, which are sold globally, everywhere from China, Greece, Spain, Guatemala, and the list goes on. We recently gathered FDA registration, and our products can be reimbursed through what's called FSA and HSA payments to help make them more affordable for the consumer. And right now, we're working on building a reimbursable medical supply distribution platform that will have a telehealth integration. So how it all started was, if you can believe it or not, this is me, my sophomore year at Babson. I became chronically ill starting about in the 7th grade, where we now know I was bit by a tick, which transmitted a disease called Lyme disease. It's quite common here in New England, but all my life I struggled with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, some neurological challenges, and by the time I got to college, I didn't have full feeling in my right leg. I started to be sleeping through classes. I was getting increasingly confused. So my doctor decided that I would need a medical device, which is called a PICC line. It stands for peripherally inserted central catheter. It's essentially an IV that stays in your arm for as long as you need for treatment. So that's me right after surgery with my first PICC line. I had never heard of this medical device. I previously had been in a sorority, I was in a scholarship program, super active on campus, and then all of a sudden, my life really changed. With this medical device, I felt very unsafe going about my daily life. I felt exposed because this catheter went all the way to my heart, and I was living in a dorm room setting where people didn't necessarily understand what it meant to live with the medical device, and I slowly had to explain to people why my health was becoming a huge challenge for me. And I noticed that people started to treat me differently once they could see that something was physically different about me. It was everything from I stopped getting invited to parties to people almost like spoke slower to me and more cautiously, which was a big change for me because I'd previously been super active, although I lived with chronic pain. And really what set me off on my entrepreneurial journey was I was super unsatisfied with what the doctor recommended for me to protect my medical device. So currently, when this device is placed, doctors just tell patients to wear a sock on their arm. So think like those socks that you're wearing right now, they tell you to cut off the toes and literally wear that on your arm. So I did that for about 6 months, and anytime I wore short sleeves, people would kind of like stop and look at me funny, like, why is this girl wearing a sock on her arm? It was really embarrassing, and it really motivated me to try to fix something and to create something that could solve this problem. Maybe I'll just stand here and we'll click away. Okay, cool. That'd be helpful, Joe. So I want to encourage all of you to think about what pain point in your daily life are you trying to solve? For me, this was a very real need to be able to secure a medical device. But whatever you're working on, whether that's a capstone project, an architectural problem, I want you to start to think about what is that annoying thing in your mind that you feel like you could dream up a solution for. So that's how I got started with my entrepreneurial journey, but it's morphed into so many directions that I could never have imagined when I was lying here in this hospital bed. So being chronically ill, I knew from day one that I could not do this alone. Up on the screen on the far left is me and my 2 co-founders. Yusuf, he's originally from Kuwait, and he was an international student at Babson. And Maria Del Mar Gomez, she's originally from the Dominican Republic and was also an international student. Fast forward, Yusuf is now my husband, and Maria was my bridesmaid in my wedding. So they're not only my best friends, but they're my co-founders as well. And I knew that in building a team around me, a few things had to occur. First, I needed to find people who had complementary skills to me, that we could think in similar ways, yet had very different skill sets. So, for example, I'm a big design thinker. My background is in technology, entrepreneurship, and design. I'm not gonna lie, I hate spreadsheets. I'm not a fan of accounting. Numbers were always a huge challenge for me. So Yusuf, he really took that role. He does spreadsheets for fun. So we're like, okay, perfect. When it came to things like figuring out inventory management and how much funding we would need to place a purchase order, that was his responsibility, and he actually enjoyed doing that. And he also didn't really want to get up in front of a group and talk to a lot of people. Whereas Maria, she is also very entrepreneurial and like-minded in design thinking, but she thought very operationally. So because we were creating a physical product, she had a great skill set in being able to figure out how can we go from designing a product to prototyping it, to getting manufacturing samples, to getting it, into a warehouse and then shipped out to a customer. So building a team around us was really key. And I get the question a lot, where can you find co-founders? I think you're all in a really lucky position that you're surrounded by incredible people here at Wentworth, and there's reciprocity with other amazing schools in the Boston area. I found that my co-founders were my best friends. So if you have an entrepreneurial idea, I would just start by talking to your friends and seeing if there's a fit and there's that similar passion. When it comes to Yusuf and Maria as well, they both experienced the problem that we were trying to solve because they were my direct caregivers. And they also had family members who were either disabled or chronically ill, facing similar challenges of not really feeling like people while going through the US medical system. Another way that a lot of my friends have found co-founders is through class projects. So maybe someone isn't your best friend, but you've noticed that when it comes to a project, they're working on a similar idea. It might be a good idea that you guys can team up and work together. And a lot of people these days are meeting co-founders or collaborators through online communities. You guys are Gen Z, so I don't really have to tell you, about the magic of finding people online. But for us, when we first started, Instagram was really just taking off, and we were able to find some of our earliest advocates for what we were building through just searching Instagram hashtags, watching other YouTube videos. And then we literally would reach out to these people saying, can I buy you a cup of coffee for you to tell me about your problem? So it was pretty cool. And I would say, don't be afraid to just reach out to people saying, this is what I'm building. This is what I'm working on. Would you be interested in joining a team, meeting for coffee to talk about the idea, or seeing, if someone's a little bit further, would you want to join someone else's team? There's so many pathways to becoming an entrepreneur. I just got really lucky that my two best friends also had a similar passion for solving these problems. I also want you guys to think about what skills do you possess and what skills would you need to complement what you're doing. So for example, I talked a little bit about how I hate numbers. Yusuf loves spreadsheets. It was kind of like a match made in heaven. Maybe write them all down. Maybe an Accelerate event could help you identify them. But start to become really clear on what can only you do as the amazing person that you are. So because this is Wentworth, I know you guys know a lot about prototyping. Can you guys tell me a little bit about things that you've prototyped here, either at Accelerate or during your coursework here? Yeah?
So for freshman year, thank you. So, too loud. So for freshman year, we had a project where we had to prototype something for a problem that we found. Basically, as freshmen, we didn't have any idea what would need to be changed, and we really didn't have the skills to do anything. So our group decided that it's a little bit annoying to have to, get out of bed because our beds were kind of high, and grab your things from your desk. So we made a little table that you could attach to your bedside, and it could just stay there, just like a little portable nightstand.
Cool.
Yeah, we printed it out. It looked horrible, but we passed with flying colors, and so that's the close. Yeah, we passed.
And you learned something along the way, right?
Yeah.
What would you say one learning from making that prototype was?
It's to find reliable team members.
Okay, those co-founders. Totally makes sense. So for us, the way I first made a prototype, because Babson did not have an amazing makerspace like you all have, was I found someone on Craigslist who knew how to sew. We brought her a sketch of what we were trying to do. We brought her, what the traditional medical device was, and we worked together to cut and sew something that I could start to show people at startup events. Slowly, as I started to meet more people online, and we would send them either renderings, demos, short videos, we started to get a lot of feedback. So this was the first product we launched. It's a catheter securement device, which we called Pick Perfect, which was actually the original name of our company. We weren't thinking big enough when we first started. And I want to encourage all of you to show your prototype to as many people as possible, as fast as possible. So going back to his idea, he could have gone around and knocked on everyone's door within the dorm room and said, can you try this out for a night and give me some feedback, and start to record that. And then that information could help inform the next iteration if he had decided to keep going with that idea. Does that click for everyone? Cool. I'd say a big thing is accepting feedback with open arms, but also try to weed out what is just someone's opinion. I found that we kind of took too many people's advice because I was in the mindset of oh, I'm a young college student, these people, because they're a doctor or a nurse, knows better. But in truth, a lot of the people who are giving me advice never actually lived with the problem themselves. And so when I took too many people's advice, I was trying to solve everyone's problem, but I wasn't really listening to what other people like me had the same problem experiencing. And then if you get a little farther and you start to do these type of pitch events, you're going to have quote unquote judges telling you what's good or what's bad about your business. Weed that stuff out. Take it with a grain of salt. These people are listening to you for maybe a 3 to 5 to 10 minute pitch. You have been hungry and digesting this problem for months and months and months. So take everything with a grain of salt. Just say, thank you, I'll take that into consideration. But notice also if there's themes. If you heard 5 times that the manufacturing cost of this will probably be too high, it's time to start thinking about, how could I maybe lower the cost of that? Just as an example. I would also say try to sell as soon as you have what's called an MVP, which would be minimal viable product. Have you guys come up with MVPs in your classes before with Accelerate?
Well, I came up with it in my classes, but not with Accelerate.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So for one of my classes, we had to make a mobile app, and by the end of the class, we developed a MVP of the app itself. It didn't look the best, but it was fully functional. It was all there.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So a way that you could quote unquote sell your MVP as soon as possible, if it's an app, you could have kept going with it and uploaded it to the App Store. For us, because we had a physical product, one of the first things we did was we opened an Etsy shop. And I remember that first time we got a sale, it was just like magic in our fingertips because we knew that someone else had enough of the same problem that we did that they were willing to pay money for it. And then it was so cool because the woman who bought our first product, which really was a very small production run, a couple hundred units, she was pregnant at the time, and she said by having our product, she felt safer playing with her children while she was going through this medical treatment. So also collect the feedback once you just get out there and start selling. And you can start selling, to your family, to your friends. Opening an online store has never been easier. Lastly, the importance of surveys, focus groups, interviews, and using accelerators to refine your idea. So Wentworth has Accelerate. That's the perfect place. Oh my God, he has one of our original pick line covers. I brought an up-to-date one. We can pass it around. This was one of our first production runs ever, which the idea has come so far since then. But we literally packaged them in our dorm room ourselves because the factory wanted too much money to do it. So. Going back to surveys and focus groups, have you guys talked about that within your classes at all? A little bit? Okay. So using a focus group, for example, would be maybe jumping on a Zoom call with 3 to 5 to 10 people who are all having the same issue that you're trying to solve. So I remember I was working here at Accelerate right after I graduated from college, and a few students were trying to solve the issue of it being unsafe to bike at night in Boston. So they created this light that would auto-generate just through pedaling. And one of the things we did with them was we gathered a number of students who also biked to campus, and we tried to figure out, what problems they had, what products were they using. They tried out the prototype. And then they went back into the makerspace, took that feedback into the next idea and version of the product. So you have so many peers around you, collaborate. Yeah.
I'm just curious. You said to show off your prototype to as many people as possible. Was there any worry when you were doing that this is a good idea, someone might steal it, or I don't know, just getting denied too much, or yeah?
Yeah, I think that's always a concern that others could copy your idea. And it depends on what you're building. I will say that, if it's some super proprietary code, you can do something like have someone sign a waiver ahead of time. For us, we knew this was a pretty specific problem. So if someone else was going to do it, good for them. I think a lot of it comes down to your passion for the idea, because even if you launched, someone else could enter into the market a year later. That's always going to happen. But maybe start by just showing people you trust, whether that's friends, family, or some close friends you have online. But there's definitely ways to protect yourself that Accelerate can help you to figure out. So we talked a little bit about our first product, which is a catheter securement device. And as we got out into the market and we started selling those first couple hundred units, we started to hear from our same customers and potential customers that they had a whole slew of challenges living with chronic illness, disabilities, and medical devices. And so we had originally started by naming the product and the company Pick Perfect. But as we got a little further, we're like, wait, there's a whole brand that can be developed here. So we actually took a step back. We took a summer to rebrand the company, and we called Pick Perfect our first product, which is being passed around. And we renamed the company Mighty Well because we wanted it to be an umbrella for solving the challenges of people living with chronic illness, disability, and medical device. So here are the 3 things we learned. 1, patients had a lack of medical supplies that actually did what they were supposed to do. We found that so many of the products I myself as a patient were using and our community were using were developed by engineers in a lab who really hadn't even talked to patients or lived with the challenge themselves. We started to hear the same problems over and over again, and even someone who had a PICC line may also have a feeding tube. They may also be in a wheelchair. They may also have trouble showering. So we started to hear all of these problems, and we started to think as a company, how can we solve for the whole patient? Second, community and education. As you can imagine, getting a medical device is completely overwhelming. Having a new diagnosis comes with so many fears and questions. And myself and so many other patients were really overwhelmed by going into medical appointments and just hearing like doctor jargon thrown at us, and add on top like you already don't feel well. So not only was it a part of our SEO strategy, which is how people find information online, but we knew we wanted it to be a core tenet of the company, that we were educating patients on how to understand what was happening to them medically in simple, everyday language and education. So far we've done this by creating a whole e-learning platform, which we're in the process of fully launching. It started just as some YouTube videos, some blog posts, but now we're creating a whole hub so patients can come and say if you have diabetes, you can learn everything you need to know in simple to understand education, and also link to our products. And then there's a whole revenue stream that we're building into that. And then lastly, we found that this whole category of people who were living with medical devices wasn't actually being built or represented by the people having those problems in their everyday life. So at first we decided that we were going to be a medical apparel company, and we decided that because it was kind of the easiest barriers to entry in getting the company off the ground. We've since transitioned to being an FDA registered medical device company, which has come with its own challenges. But in both categories, both apparel for people with disability and accessing medical supplies, we found that most businesses in the market were not started, ran, or operated by people who actually lived with those everyday problems. It tended to be people who saw a way to make money off of people with disabilities, which not only didn't resonate with me as a consumer, I saw as an opportunity. So I want you to all think about these challenges that maybe you're trying to solve through your class project or your entrepreneurial, dreams. What issues can you solve that you have a unique advantage in representing for the customer? Are there any questions about identifying the problems as you guys start to think about some ideas in your head? No? Okay, we can come back. So one of the biggest questions I get is, okay, I have this idea, I want to make it, I want to build a company, but how can I fund it? I'd say you're all really lucky that you're thinking entrepreneurially within college, because there's programs like Accelerate who can help you guys access materials, Maybe there's stipends, maybe there's grants, or maybe there's money available through other programs, which Joe probably knows more about. But when I actually worked here in Accelerate for 6 months, and at the time there was a pitch competition that helped students get funding to pursue their ideas further. So for us, all the way at the left, you can see we did a Kickstarter right off the bat. We had been working on this as a class project, which was also great because I had dedicated time within my class, and I was also getting credit to keep going with this idea. So I went to San Francisco for a semester where my school had a campus. As a part of my class project, I launched a Kickstarter. And are you all familiar with Kickstarter? Yeah, awesome. When we launched, it was still like pretty new, so we had to field a lot of questions to like our family members, like, what is this? What am I giving you money for? But we ended up raising $13,000 by 130 backers, and this gave us enough funding to do our first production run at a factory. Turns out it cost $16,000 at the end of the day because there was a lot of hidden fees we didn't know about, so we were kind of left scrambling, how do we pay for this inventory? And one of the ways we went about that after the Kickstarter was we went back to Babson to try to figure out what kind of small entrepreneurship grants that they had. So we got a few $100s here, a few $1,000s there, and eventually we were able to pay for our first round of inventory. If you decide to go further, there's so many new platforms where you can raise money. Once you set up an LLC or a C corporation, which Accelerate can talk more about how to form the actual business itself. But we did something which is called equity crowdfunding. When we did this, we were one of the first companies ever on this platform. So again, we had to answer a lot of questions. How is equity crowdfunding different than regular crowdfunding? And in simple terms is Kickstarter, no one receives a share of your company, they receive a product. Whereas with equity crowdfunding, we basically pre-sold shares of our company, which Michael made an investment in. So thank you, Michael, and he's officially an investor in Mighty Well. We raised almost $100,000 from 238 investors who we still keep updated on the company. Many of our family and friends who wanted to make small investments were able to use this almost like as a vehicle for making small investments. And it was everything from $20 to $10,000 that went into this platform. We went through a number of accelerators. So there's Accelerate, which is kind of like your school's in-house accelerator and makerspace. But once we started to get traction within the community and some early sales, we applied to a program called MassChallenge. Have any of you heard of MassChallenge? Joe has. You want to tell them what MassChallenge is? Okay, so MassChallenge is one of the best equity-free accelerators in the United States. They're also globally. They're in the Seaport here with different branches all over the US, in also Europe and the Middle East. It's essentially you work on your idea for an intensive 3 to 6 months. There's a demo day and pitch at the end, and you can continue to refine your idea while meeting other investors and like-minded entrepreneurs. We then went on to raise angel and VC funding. VC is venture capital. You've probably heard of it in terms of big companies like Twitch and Twitter and Grubhub. All of those have raised venture funding, if not going on to raise private equity funding, which is like kind of final stage. So we can talk more about that, but I think the simplest way to start to get funding into your business is to sell your products. So Joe told me he likes to make Harry Potter wizard wands, right? He could start to sell those by just making a Shopify site, and that would start to bring in revenue so he could start to build more cool things. So we can get into more questions if you guys have them around this, but there's so many creative ways to fund a business, and I personally did just about every one of them to date. Most have been extremely difficult and often frustrating at times, but because we knew we wanted to be a large global medical device company, we knew we had to raise money and not just fund the company by sales, because there was a lot of R&D and a lot of government paperwork that we had to go through. So I love Accelerate. I don't think you guys realize like how lucky you are. I worked here for about 6 months right after I graduated from Babson while my team and I were at MassChallenge. And it used to be across the walkway. It was kind of dingy. You know, there wasn't this beautiful space that you have now. But I made one of my first prototypes for a shirt that people could access a port in their chest for chemotherapy here. Tori even helped me to sew. Like, you guys have so many resources here. So although I wasn't a student in Accelerate, I certainly benefited from the makerspace that you all have here. Joe can talk more about that, but you guys are so lucky that you have all of these materials and the time to learn about how to use this equipment. So I talked a little bit about MassChallenge. We went through a number of other programs. I'll name them quickly. Morgan Stanley, which is one of the biggest banks in the world, they made an investment in our company. A lot of banks now or hospitals have these kind of venture funds, venture programs that not only come with cash, but often come with mentorship and connections, which is huge. Babson has a program called Women Innovating Now. This is open to women all across Boston. Susan Duffy launched the program if you have more questions for her about it. And then we did countless pitch events when I was an undergrad in the first few years out of college. So I know Wentworth is trying to get their pitch event back rocking and rolling. I'd say start there. It's a friendly audience. You'll have plenty of coaching. You have an amazing space here. Start there, and then Joe can help connect you to other pitch events if you want to keep going. We probably, it's been a while, but I think we won close to $40,000 in equity-free pitch money. So many people want to support student entrepreneurs. There's an abundance of capital. You just have to apply, do your best, show up, give it your all, and chances are a piece of that pie could be yours. So this is me and my two co-founders with Carla Harris. She started the Morgan Stanley Innovation Lab. There's also so many accelerators now that focus on diversity and inclusion. So those are popping up all day, every day. We just applied to one that's Maria's Latina. It's for Latina tech founders at Google. So we're trying to access some of Google's resources. Google it, it's out there. I want to encourage all of you to have a social mission attached to whatever you're building or dreaming up. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. For me, I was always entrepreneurial, but I also knew that because of my disability, I could not work a traditional 9-to-5 job. So entrepreneurship allowed me flexibility in my schedule. You know, I was definitely working more than a 40-hour week, but if I needed to go to a doctor's appointment at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, I could control that outcome. So for me, there's been so many times where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, it's so hard, especially when I would see all my friends like climbing the corporate ladder. But then literally every day we get messages from our community. Actually just got a message from Kira, who's standing up in the middle. She lives with a feeding tube and a port in her chest. We made a product called the Mighty Pack, which is a mobile IV backpack. So instead of like walking around with an IV pole, which is something I used to do, I was like, I don't want to walk around in public with an IV pole. How can we fix this problem? So we created a backpack that acts as basically an IV pole. Kira had that same problem. She loved our product so much. We are about to launch a new iteration of it. She was texting me yesterday, how can I get the early access one? I want it in this new color. Like, how can I share my ambassador code with people? So having that direct feedback and relationship with our customers not only helps us to inform our product iteration and keep improving on our products, but hearing from them literally on an everyday basis gives us that fuel when our tanks are kind of feeling low. It's definitely one of my favorite things about being an entrepreneur. So we're going to wrap up with a group exercise. These past 2 years, I've gotten really into intention setting, meditation, slowing down, because entrepreneurs tend to go fast, 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 fast. And I want to do this exercise where we're setting intentions, whether it's for your entrepreneurial venture, your class project, maybe an app you're working on the side, or a capstone project. So doing something like this will help us come back to the why of why we're working on this project when we feel like it's too much, I want to give up. So I'll walk you through an example, and then Joe's going to pass around paper for everyone and some Sharpies. So you'll have like a little take-home poster that you can put over your desk, or you can take a picture of, or you can throw it in the trash if it's not resonating with you. So the first part, it says, I'm making this for, and I'll walk you through how I thought about it. So I'm making this company for patients who want to feel safe, sanitary, and secure while living with medical devices. So anytime we launch a new product, whether digital or a physical good, we ask ourselves, does this help patients feel safe, sanitary, which means like cleaner during their medical treatment, and secure, like their device is not going to be ripped out of their body, which was actually an experience I had. When I'm done, it will be a success if. So for me, it was when I'm done, which either means I sell the company, I close the company, I get acquired, and I go work for a larger company inside of an organization. To me, I know that I'll feel like I was successful if just one person doesn't experience the pain and suffering that I went through with my medical device. And I want you to think about this as what's your version of success? Not what the school's telling you, not what your professor, not your mom and dad. What is your version of success? And it's different for everyone. And then finally, like I said, when you feel tired, scared, or worried that your efforts are pointless, you're like, oh, I just put all this time into creating this product, and you decide to put it in the trash at the end of the day. Or maybe you want to dig a little bit deeper and go back to the mission of why you're doing this. So does that framework work for everyone? Cool. And then I'd like if we could share them at the end, Joe, if we have a little bit of time. Cool. So I want you to start thinking about either your moonshot crazy idea that you want to come to life. Maybe it's your capstone project. Maybe it's something you've been working on and accelerate. Start to think about that while Joe hands out the materials. So then when we're done, we'll share them with everyone, and then we can open it up for Q&A. Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Of course.
And if anyone's having trouble thinking of an idea, just call me or Michael or Joe over, and we can talk through some things that maybe some problems that have been keeping you up at night.
Does it have to solve a problem?
It's up to you. It's up to you. If it's solving, I don't know, what would you say, Michael?
Don't be concerned with solving the problem. Be concerned with the problem. Love the problem. How many times have you seen that and heard that?
Love the problem.
Yes, love the problem. In doing this, what's the problem? And for Emily, it was the problem that patients can't, with what's available, can't feel safe, sanitary, and secure. That's the problem. Her solution was Pick Perfect. And then Pick Perfect morphing into a full company, a full line company. Pay attention to the problem. Because in that, the slide before this, the woman who wanted the backpacks, it's another thing that came out of safe, sanitary, and secure. So pay attention to the problem.
So you can kind of see, here's her IV tubing hanging out of her chest, or out of her stomach. Something like that could easily get pulled out of her, just by going on the T.
Right, and think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you've got it. I was going to yell at Joe. Look at how unobtrusive that is. I didn't even notice that from sitting in the back, as opposed to walking around with a pole or any number of things, and how the way this is secured it's unlikely that it's going to get stuck on a doorknob or something compared to walking around with a pole. Okay? Going upstairs with a pole, walking uphill with a pole, walking on cobblestones with a pole. That's the challenges that they face every day. That's why you pay attention to the problem. The solution will eventually come.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Some of the other products that we make that are in here is, this is my friend Chalice. She has a slew of medical challenges, and one of them was she had so many pills, and I faced this problem myself. I had so many medications I had to take all throughout the day. A lot of patients we saw were carrying around like a tote bag just full of all their supplements. So we made what's called the Med Planner, which the newest version is called the Self-Care Case. Essentially, it looks kind of like an old school like CD case, but when you open it, it's almost like a file system for all of your pills and medication. So the problem was, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. I have 20 different pills to take today, and I'm reaching in my bag. I'm pulling out the wrong one. I can't get it when I need it. Okay, how can we make something that's sleek and keeps all of her medication safe, sanitary, and secure? So here's the framework again. I'll give you guys a few minutes to think about it.
So are we going to put this down on here, or just with the post?
You can, so I envisioned it as, you know, maybe the front of your paper says, I'm making this for blank. You could be making it for yourself. You could be making it for your grandma. You could be making it for your friend. And on the back, you can think about when you're done with this project, this business, this idea with my friend, how will you feel like it was worth your time? What's your definition of success? For me, it's just making sure that another patient didn't get their IV pulled out of their arm because they were wearing a sock on it, which is literally what happened to me. So you can think about that. We'll give you guys a few minutes.
And Omar, if you need another piece of paper to draw the poster, we can give you another piece of paper. Okay?
While you guys are working on that, I brought the newest version of our product. I'll pass that around. My bag's over here. So the one Michael passed around was from one of our first production runs. We did all that prototyping, focus groups, and feedback. You can take it out and touch it. This is our new packaging, which we now sell into everywhere from hospitals to med device companies to Amazon. Pass around some other products. We developed a mask before the pandemic because most of our community is immunocompromised. So people like me were already wearing masks out in public or in medical settings. And a lot of people couldn't find masks that would actually stay up on their nose. So we created a mask that basically pinches to your nose and seals the face. So this one's clean, I promise.
And I wore your mask almost through the entire pandemic.
That's awesome. And it's okay. It's towards the end. I'll pop it up one more time.
We're trying to time it to see like when it goes out, but like
It's okay. It's okay. Like I told you guys, it's my first time out in public doing this in 2 years. Let's see if we can get it.
And one of the nice things about those masks and the way the masks were designed, I used to wear them in the morning to go out for a run, and it was the only mask that I didn't inhale into my mouth.
Yes.
No, it was formed that way, and the nose clip was easy to use and comfortable. Much easier to run with than any of the other stuff that we've got here.
And I'll leave some cards for you guys for after. Okay, does anyone feel like they're ready to share?
I don't have a post.
Are you ready to share? Okay. I'll come back to you.
I'll pass around the microphone.
Thank you. All right, I'll give everyone another 60 seconds. Yeah, that'd be great, Joe.
All right, here we go. This is for, or I am making this for, crazy Harry Potter fans who want the real wand experience. Thank you for the example.
Awesome.
And when I am done, I will know it will be a success when at least one person sits there when their friends come over and says, "That's my wand right there. My wand."
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm making this for students and educators who are unaware of how much information is available about our planet, just not accessible or easily accessible. I've got, when I'm done, like, someone learns more about the planet they live on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for kicking it off. And this can be like a living, breathing document. So if you feel like you like this framework, you want to keep thinking about it, you can come back to it.
So I'm currently working on a project with the Caracas Studio for Architecture. We're making an exhibition actually in CEIS, and this project that I'm working on is I'm working for the people of Caracas, the professors who have actually worked on these projects before, and my fellow and future classmates that might be influenced by this. And I'll see this as a success if this is viewed by those in Venezuela who can potentially make a change, or it'll inspire those to make future changes in other areas or inspire future designers themselves.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like it has a real social impact. I know sharing is scary, but it's also rewarding.
Well, my idea, it's probably like a web service, I guess. I call it on-demand small batch product manufacturing for early stage startups. As you mentioned, best funding is to sell your product, right? But what if you don't have product and you call like a company who can produce it and they say, oh, minimum is $100,000 and this many units, but you need only like 20.
We have that problem. That's a real problem.
So if, this service somehow allow big manufacturer to make profit from small batches, if for some reasons they don't want to do small and only go big, and if it's successful, if actually someone would use it. Yeah.
Just
Thank
one
you.
person to use it. That means you did something right.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I know you all have papers.
I don't want to. We won't push you to.
Okay. Well, if you don't want to share them, I'll open it up for Q&A. And for the last time, I'll pop up the screen, which has my contact info. If you're thinking about something later, I let the Accelerate team know you can all get in touch. Maybe. We post a lot, mainly on Instagram, about the patients who are using our products. So if some of this kind of sounds like, I don't really understand what she's doing, check out the Reels or the TikToks we've made. We have so many brand ambassadors who send us content of how they're using our products in real life. That's really where I started to learn about the issues that other patients faced, was just by searching and talking to people on social media. So I highly encourage it. I also want to share with all of you that there's many different ways to be an entrepreneur. You can obviously start your own business, but maybe you have a family business that you want to go into and take into I want to call it the 21st century. My dad, he manufactures surfboards by hand, literally in our backyard. So one of the things I'm trying to help him with is simple things like building a website, having an Instagram account. There's so many amazing people and craftsmen who just need help elevating their business to the next level. You can also join a large corporation and be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone who works maybe in the R&D team, helps to figure out how can an already existing business grow into the future. So I have a few friends who work for Target, and they're entrepreneurs at Target, and they're trying to figure out what are the upcoming trends, how can Target bring their business into the modern age, and they actually created an accelerator within Target to help fuel and fund these next group of businesses. So there's so many different ways, and I want you to try to think big as possible if you feel like entrepreneurship is really calling you. So if anyone else doesn't want to share, we can open it up for questions, or if you guys have to go, I can stick around for a little while. And then Susan said I may be invited back, so we can always pick this up next time I'm here. And thank you, Michael, for wearing our shirt. We created this shirt for people who, our tagline is friend in the fight. So whether you're a patient like myself who is literally fighting the medical system, or you are a supporter, a loved one, a caregiver, we wanted everyone to feel included, because it's not just people like myself. There's always a care team and support team, whether that's medical, family, or friends, helping the patient to live a little bit better. So thank you all, and we can open it up for questions.
So you went from having one product to expanding to an overall brand. What was the biggest hurdle in growing into a larger front? Was it, facing the FDA and trying to get past all those regulations and all that, or was there something else?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit more of a background as to why we started to go from one product to multiple products pretty quickly. Mighty Well won a pitch competition, which at the time was the largest venture capital investment competition in the United States. So we got an investment of $250,000 from a fund here in Boston called Breakaway Ventures. They're no longer really operating, but the idea at the time was they would make an investment, they would bring someone who had senior leadership onto the company's board or within the company, and they would provide marketing and branding services. So they helped us to come up with the Friend in the Fight tagline. So at that point, we had really just gone from the one product. I had made some prototypes like actually here in Accelerate, and we showed them, we pitched, and we ended up winning. So the idea and what we were pitching was going from one product to this whole brand of apparel for people with disabilities. So that was really why we went from one product to multiple very quickly. What ended up being quite challenging was we were able to raise a little bit more money there. We ended up raising, I think, about $500,000, but that still was not enough to properly invest in the marketing of having multiple products. So there's one product that we created from this initial investment, which was a wrap jacket for people who were either seated in wheelchairs or going through breast cancer or needed easy on and off apparel. This product, anyone who has it loves it, but we never had enough money to invest in the marketing of it. And truth be told, we're still sitting on inventory of it because we decided with what marketing budget we had, we would invest that into the Pick Perfect, which was selling consistently, and there was a growth rate to that. So, having a physical product business is a lot more expensive than I ever thought. Even though a lot of people don't have physical retail anymore, there's so many hidden costs within e-commerce, and marketing ends up taking a huge percentage of people's budgets, including ours. The FDA stuff was really just paperwork, so it was annoying, but We hired a regulatory consultant who did most of that work for us. Does anyone else have a question that comes to mind?
So how long did it take for you all to narrow down exactly what you wanted the product to do and like how you wanted it to work?
As a product line in a whole or a specific product?
The first product that you made.
So I'd say we had a bit of a unique situation, which I actually encourage you all to solve for, because this is a problem I lived with like all day, every day. And I had bought every product that was on the market and it literally didn't work for me. Another piece of my background was within Babson. My degree was in design and design thinking. So going back to what I was talking about of creating focus groups, I started to meet all these friends on the internet, and I would say like, oh, I have this problem. Do you have this problem? You know, there's many different kinds and sizes of catheters. So we just kept kind of tweaking the product and sharing it with people, either giving it away for free, or sometimes even people would pay for it and still give us their feedback, which actually happens quite a bit. And then over each manufacturing run that we did, we tweaked the product just a little bit at a time. Right now with the original product we have 2 versions of it. One requires a prescription that we're working on selling into hospitals. And then one is treated more like an apparel item. So we're trying to get insurance reimbursement for it. And then we had to like keep tweaking the product to figure out how could this be used in a hospital setting versus a home care setting. So it was a lot of just talking to people who had the same problem as me. Michael?
Emily, what's next in terms of product and distribution and any other corporate endeavor?
Yes. So I touched a little bit about this in the beginning. I am just starting to tell people about this now, but I was bedridden for a year and a half with long COVID, which reactivated a lot of infections I had. I was back in the IV center about 4 days a week, or I was doing infusions at home. I literally couldn't even look at a screen without getting dizzy or nauseous. So as I found myself back in the day-to-day life of being someone with a disability, I noticed that it was extremely difficult for myself and our community of patients to figure out which medical supplies and devices could help them best along their treatment journey. What currently happens is, you're told you're sick with this. If you're doing home care, basically a box just like shows up at your door of all the medical supplies you need. But chances are that's whatever's cheapest for that company to send you. It doesn't mean it's the best product for your care plan. Quite often there's so many issues, and a lot of people end up back in the hospital. So Mighty Well right now is building a platform where we're going to be able to accept, eventually we'll be able to accept prescriptions, but we want to basically fulfill all the supply needs that patients have. Some of those products will be Mighty Well brand products because literally what's on the market we don't believe is a good option for the patient. But we've found things like IV dressings, IV tapes, IV supplies, the best power scooter, the best cane for someone to use. And we're trying to figure out now how we can accept prescriptions to fulfill all the med supply needs a patient might have. Part of that is there's going to be a telehealth component for some of the products that need prescriptions. A patient can come on, say, I have a prescription for a feeding tube, and Mighty Well would help match them with the best-in-class supplies. Some of that's ours, some of it's not. And along with that will be a continued e-learning educational platform, because there's reimbursement codes for patients to learn with a nurse coming into their house about how to use all the supplies. So we're trying to digitize that. Another big lesson we learned is holding inventory is expensive. So we're trying to work with distributors who already hold all the inventory and then basically be just a front-end platform for that.
Would you consider some kind of certification something that's mighty well certified for some of these products that you've explored?
Yeah, so what was happening for years is I was just recommending, oh, this is the best medical tape, this is the best IV pole, whatever. But we really want that patient stamp of approval to be on these products, because what we found is most of the products out there were created by engineers in a lab who never actually talked to the people with this problem. They're talking to the doctors or nurses who service the problem. So we anticipate that will be acquired one day by a medical device company who wants to better understand what problems the patient actually has in their day-to-day life.
Would you say that's your ultimate goal with this company?
Yes. Yes. It's very difficult. I'll take that back. When you decide that you're going to take angel money or venture money, the goal is always to be sold or acquired. That's really the only way the investor gets their money out. So if you decide to fund this business on your own and you want it to be, it's called a lifestyle business, but I hate that term. If you, like my dad, for example, he makes surfboards. He has had big designers, big manufacturers of surfboards saying, you know, I want to buy your designs. And he's like, no, like I'm happy in my backyard making surfboards. That's called a lifestyle business. He's never taken outside funding for it. But because we took funding very early on, it's almost like a mandate that the company will have to be sold at the end of the day. And as a patient, I want what we're building to grow within something larger. I want this to reach as many Americans as possible. In the United States, 1/3 of every American lives with a chronic illness, disability, or mental health condition. So there's such a need, and we're still very small. By being acquired, we can reach more people.
Yeah. Maybe I missed the whole point with FDA. I'm not sure about healthcare system, but if it's like that hospitals directly buying from you, or and then distribute to patients, and then patients pay through like Medicare and stuff, or they buy directly. I mean, patients buying directly from you.
So we started under being an apparel business, which allowed us to just sell directly to the consumer. But we started to get all these inbound leads from hospitals who wanted to carry our product. Some hospitals were willing to pay out of pocket and just give it to patients as a gift. So Boston Children's Hospital, that's what they were doing. They gave this to like their most chronically ill kids. But then we started to get inquiries from larger hospital systems, and that the only way they could bring this product into their hospital system was if there was a reimbursement code and insurance or Medicaid, Medicare paid for it. So that's why we started to go down this road. Right before the pandemic, we were set to do a clinical trial with Mass General, who places the most PICC lines in the country. Unfortunately, almost every hospital in the United States is still not doing clinical trials with small companies. They're doing them with like the Pfizers of the world. So because part of the reason we're working on this med supply platform is because we still have not been able to do a clinical trial in a hospital. We've inquired with 3 different hospital systems, all of them who share this same problem. It's just COVID is still very real, and they don't have the capacity to dedicate nurses to studying a problem with a small team of nurses. So the goal is that we'll be able to accept insurance for all of the med supplies that we sell, but we also currently accept what's called FSA and HSA payments. So it's a type of insurance in the US where you almost have like tax-free dollars to spend on your health care. So that's one of the ways we help to make our products more affordable for patients. The US healthcare system is very tricky, and I'm speaking both as the patient and as a med device company. So we've actually seen a little bit more success in Europe than I was anticipating. So we have a few distributors overseas who help us. I think we have time for one more question. And if not, I can stick around for a bit.
Thank you so much, Emily. Really appreciate it.